Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. Positive start to the week for the markets. Auto and metal stocks lead the rally while the IT sector drags the markets. Mid-caps outperform the blue chip. President Trump softens his stance on India days after slamming ties as a one-sided disaster, cites a special relationship, says he will always be friends with Prime Minister Modi. The Prime Minister tweets saying he appreciates and fully reciprocates President Trump's sentiments and positive assessment of the ties. Donald Trump vows second stage of sanctions against Russia after Moscow's overnight aerial attacks across Ukraine. A government building in Kyiv was struck by Russian drones. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent signaled secondary tariffs on the countries buying Russian oil. Zelensky calls it the right idea. Top automakers announced price cuts days after the GST Council slashes taxes on vehicles, passenger vehicles from Tata Motors, Hyundai, M&M, even luxury car makers like Audi and BMW announced cuts from as low as 30,000 to as high as almost 9 lakh rupees. Commercial vehicles see even steeper reduction in prices. Govt Consumer CEO Sudhir Senapati says recent GST cuts will boost consumption, also improve competitiveness for branded companies, says consumers will start seeing the reduced prices on FMCG products early October onwards. That's an exclusive. LifeInsurers industry body and LIC write to the government after the GST Council exempts GST on insurance premia, seeks input tax credit benefit on renewal book, also urges the government to exempt GST on commission expenses. Leverage bets by Indian investors under the margin trading facility near 1 lakh crore rupees see a 13 times jump in 5 years. Hindustan Aeronautics is the most leveraged, followed by Jio Financial and Reliance Industries. A new Supreme Court bench will hear a PIL seeking a probe against Vedanta Group after Justice Vinod Chandran recused himself. The police cites a report by Viceroy Research which claims that Vedanta and its subsidiaries engaged in fraudulent practices. Israel continues its Gaza offensive. At least 21 people killed in the enclave since dawn. Israeli forces destroy another high-rise in Gaza City, bring the number of buildings razed to at least 50 so far. Gen Z's lead protests in Kathmandu against the Nepalese government's social media ban set fire to the parliament building. At least 8 dead after security forces opened fire on protesters. A curfew has been imposed in Kathmandu. Army personnel have been deployed. Well, let's start with the day's market action. As always, the markets closed in the green, but they came off their intraday highs. The Nifty and the sensex mildly higher today at the end. Auto stocks, of course, continued to be in the fast lane with the index ending 3% higher. That's the Nifty for you. Flat close, flat for the sensex as well. The mid-cap index up by about 0.5%. But look at Nifty Auto in top gear there, as we pointed out, up by over 3%. Prashant is standing by now to wrap up the day's market action for us. Prashant, the expectation was that over the weekend, the thaw that we saw between India and the US, that would certainly provide some sort of a fillip to the market. It did, but coming off highs at the close.
Well, it was looking like it was going to be a very good session. The morning start was great. There was one brief dip early on, and then there was bought. And through the course of the day, then the market kind of cruised higher, reaching 120, 130 odd point gain on top of Friday's close. And then towards the end came the sharp sell-off, and the market basically ending with minor gains at best. No real news flow, at least not that what we know of at that point, but the market not being able to hold on to those gains. Actually, I mean, you could look at this from a technical perspective as well. From a index level, from a Nifty level, we've come off exactly from an important retracement of the recent fall. So it's a level we put out in the morning as well. The Nifty up on your screen, the Nifty Bank will come up on your screen here as well. Of course, it's an index which has done very poorly as compared to the Nifty. If you take a look at the last few weeks, mid-cap and small-cap indices looked better, but nothing like what we've had over the last few sessions. Now, as far as the large caps are concerned, it was autos all the way. Mahindra & Mahindra, Tata Motors, Bajaj, Eicher, Maruti. These were pretty much the largest gainers on the index. Maybe a few steel names as well. But there also it was only JSW Steel. Tata Steel, of course, was a distant second. In terms of cuts, it was consumer names. Trent was a loser. Asian Paints lost. Nestle was lower in today's trade as well. Broader session, lots of stuff. MobiKwik, I mean, it's up 50% in September. There was a large block where a foreign investor sold their 2% stake. The move began there, and it's done 50% in the month of September. Moschip continues its very, very sharp move on large volumes. Vikram Solar, Cohans is another name which did very well. One more auto name, Bharat Forge. Actually, Bharat Forge was the largest gainer in the auto index. IOL Chemicals was a big mover. Precision Camshaft. There was Cupid. Shalby Hospitals continues to run higher. Stylum, Parag Milk, Zota, Sterlite Tech, Cyan DLM, Style Bazaar, Prime Focus. It's a block we highlighted on Thursday. It happened on Friday, but 20% since. And there was something like a Himmat Singh, a paratextile company, which was higher sharply as well. On the downside, there were a few. Amber was down about 4%. Godfrey Phillips was down 4%. And there was like a Wimta Labs, which ended about 5% in the red as well. So mixed by the close of it, not the promise what we started with, which was a very strong market. Back to you.
Well, thanks very much, Prashant, for wrapping up the market action for us. But let's head straight to the top story this evening. President Donald Trump seems to have softened his stance on India just days after slamming ties with the U.S. as a one-sided disaster. Now, speaking at the Oval Office on Friday, here's what President Trump said. He said he will always be friends with Prime Minister Modi and that there is nothing to be worried about. But only hours earlier, Trump had doubled down on India after Prime Minister Modi visited China to participate in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit. Trump had posted on Truth Social saying, and I quote, "Looks like we've lost India and Russia to deepest, darkest China. May they have a long and prosperous future together," end of quote. Now, his post was accompanied with a photograph of Prime Minister Modi, Russian President Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping from the summit in Tianjin, where they were sharing plenty of light moments together. Now, Prime Minister Modi has responded to President Trump's statement. We'll come to that in just a bit. But here's what President Trump had to say.
I always will. I'll always be friends with Modi. He's great. Prime Minister, he's great. I'll always be friends, but I just don't like what he's doing at this particular moment. But India and the United States have a special relationship. There's nothing to worry about.
Well, that is President Trump. But soon after President Trump's remarks on India-U.S. ties, Prime Minister Modi said that he appreciates and fully reciprocates President Trump's sentiments and positive assessment of their times. Remember, this is the first official response from the Prime Minister to the U.S. President since the Trump administration escalated the tariff offensive. We learned from sources that both India and the U.S. are also working towards finding common ground, signaling a step towards lowering tensions between both countries. However, the Prime Minister will not address the general debate at the United Nations General Assembly, which takes place later this month in New York, where the U.S. President is set to deliver his first address to the UN in his second term. Well, to help make sense of what is going on at this point in time, joining us now is Parikshit Luthra. Parikshit, there's a lot of back and forth that's happened. We saw that statement coming in there from President Trump, but just before President Trump, we saw Howard Lutnick's statement, where Howard Lutnick went as far as to say that India needs to say it's sorry. Now, what do we make of this change in stance? Is it in fact a change in stance at all? And what are government sources telling us on re-establishing contact and engagement with the U.S.?
Well, statements made by Prime Minister Modi and President Trump are the strongest indication of continuing connect between the leaders. That's what sources have told CNBC TV 18. We learned that Indian and US officials have been in regular touch to find common ground. Officials we have spoken to, both in India and US, emphasize that both nations have not changed their overall assessment of the importance of the strategic ties. Trade negotiations have been on for the past few weeks and continue even now. Even as a formal sixth round of talks is yet to be announced. What is the immediate focus? Our understanding is that both sides are in discussions to set aside the 25% additional penalty and reach a trade deal. Sources say that US officials want to see a strong intent from the Indian side to reduce Russian oil and defense purchases. Apart from tariff reduction and reducing the trade deficit, US officials have sought elimination of non-tariff barriers, import limits, and a level playing field for American companies has been sought in repeated trade negotiations. However, the ending of the Russia-Ukraine war is a priority for Donald Trump and the White House right now. And US wants India to make efforts towards ending the war. India, on its part, remains committed to negotiating a BTA, but without any compromise on sectors like agriculture and dairy. So clearly, there is a positive momentum, positive start right now. India will also be carefully evaluating statements coming in from the White House and the Trump administration. And let's take things as it comes. But right now, we're not celebrating. The government is not calling this a truce, but they're saying that, yes, it is at least a positive opening right now.
Prime Minister Modi obviously attaches enormous importance to our partnership with the United States. Where President Trump is concerned, he's always had a very good personal equation with President Trump. But the point is, look, we are engaged, we remain engaged with the United States, and at this time, I can't say more than that.
There is a package which consists of very many different ways in which we want to help them. So we'll wait for the cabinet to clear it, but there is something coming to help them so that this tirade of the tariff is something which they can face, and also suddenly having to look for newer markets is also a challenge, but we'll have to help them out on that.
So is there a sense in the government that this could be a slightly longer haul?
We hope not, but we really can't leave our exporters high and dry saying it's going to change sooner. We will work with them.
Nirmalaji, will we also continue to buy Russian oil?
Yes, that's been made very plain and simple. Whether it is Russian oil or anything else, it's our decision to buy from the place which suits our needs.
And you can watch that conversation with the Finance Minister that's coming up for you at 5:30 p.m. tonight and 10 p.m. as well. So do tune in for that. Now, Chief Economic Advisor Anantha Nageshwaran says U.S. tariffs may impact India's GDP by 0.5% in FY26. Speaking to Bloomberg, the Chief Economic Advisor said he hopes that the additional 25% tariff is a short-lived phenomena. However, he cautioned that if it extends to the next financial year, then it could pose a major risk to India's growth trajectory. So that's the CEA on the tariff impact. Meanwhile, the 13th round of trade negotiations between India and the European Union currently underway in New Delhi. Sources tell us that the Commerce Minister may meet EU Trade Commissioner on the 12th of September. A key focus area of the discussion will be the protection of certain sensitive sectors, including agriculture. And External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar will attend the virtual BRICS summit that will convene later today by President Lula da Silva of Brazil. Prime Minister Modi will not participate, while Chinese President Xi and Russian President Putin are expected to be present. This is all virtual. Among other issues, the leaders are expected to discuss ways to deal with Trump's tariffs. In international news, Russia has launched its largest airstrike on Ukraine since the start of the war. The attack set a main government building in central Kyiv on fire, killing at least 4 people. In a post on social media, Ukraine's President Zelensky issued a fresh appeal to allies to strengthen Ukrainian air defenses. Meanwhile, President Trump has said that he was not happy about these attacks and has threatened tougher sanctions on Russia.
Are you ready to move to the second phase of sanctions against Russia or punishing Putin? How is your call with the...
Yes, I think so, says President Trump when asked if he's ready to impose secondary sanctions on Russia. And speaking of sanctions, leaders of the European Union are also exploring sanctions on about half a dozen Russian banks and energy companies. As per Bloomberg, the EU is also planning to target Russia's payment and credit card systems and crypto exchanges. Russian oil continues to be a contentious issue in trade talks. In an interview to NBC News overnight, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has called EU to jointly increase pressure on Russia by imposing tariffs and sanctions on countries buying Russian oil. Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Zelensky has backed President Trump's move to impose tariffs on nations trading with Russia, calling it, and I quote, the right idea. In an interview with ABC News, Zelensky described energy trade with Russia as Putin's weapon against Ukraine. This is a worry for India. Shares of auto companies zooming in trade today after top automakers announced significant price cuts. This comes days after the GST Council cut the GST rates on passenger vehicles. Companies like Maruti, Hyundai, M&M, along with luxury car makers like Audi and BMW have all announced cuts ranging from as low as 30,000 to as high as almost 9 lakh rupees. Sudarshan standing by to give us a breakdown of all the price cuts and what consumers can expect this festive season. Sud.
So August 15, Independence Day, and Prime Minister Modi's speech from the rampart of Red Fort announced a big GST reform after 8 years of its implementation and called it double Diwali bonus, and that triggered a big move in auto names. Since then, auto index is up 11%, and most of the leading names from TVS Motor, Hero MotoCorp, and Maruti to M&M have seen a move somewhere in the range of 11 to 17%. Fast forward to September 13. GST Council held a meeting considering proposals related to GST reforms, and in a unanimous decision, Council has approved all the proposals as expected. And what came as a surprising was the decision to implement these reforms from September 22, saving most companies from what it could have been a washout festive season. And in resultant, here comes a big price cut for everything we use to commute. No matter it's an entry vehicle car or a luxury car, the prices have gone for a major revision from as low as of rupees 30,000 to as high as almost rupees 9 lakh. Let's start with Mahindra & Mahindra. It has announced price cut up to rupees 1.56 lakh and has already come into effect on September 6. The Bolero's price drops from rupees 10.52 lakh to rupees 9.25 lakh, a reduction of almost rupees 1.30 lakh. The Scorpio is now rupees 1.45 lakh cheaper. The Thar Rocks sees a cut of almost rupees 1.33 lakh. And their flagship XUV 700 price is now down by rupees 1.43 lakh. Next in the list is Tata Motors. It has taken a cut for both passenger vehicles and commercial vehicles, and that price cut would be effective September 22. In passenger vehicles, cuts go up to rupees 1.55 lakh, and the Nexon is cheaper by rupees 1.55 lakh. The Safari by rupees 1.45 lakh, the Punch by rupees 85,000, and the Tigor by rupees 80,000. In commercial vehicle segment, reductions are even steeper. Heavy trucks are cheaper by up to rupees 4.65 lakh. Buses and vans by as much as rupees 4.35 lakh, and small CVs and pickups by up to rupees 1.10 lakh. And if you are planning to buy Creta, Venue or i20, take a look at the price cut announced by Hyundai. Prices have been dropped by up to rupees 2.40 lakh. The i20 price is now rupees 98,000 cheaper. Venue price drops by rupees 1.23 lakh, and the Creta sees a reduction of rupees 72,000. The Alcazar by rupees 75,000 and Tucson by as much as rupees 2.40 lakh. Even luxury car makers have joined in and have aligned their prices with the new GST regime. Audi has slashed prices by up to rupees 7.80 lakh. BMW has announced reductions of as much as rupees 8.90 lakh, and Mercedes-Benz has cut prices across its portfolio ranging from rupees 2.60 lakh to as much as rupees 11 lakh. So what next? The big question, will the industry see a revival in demand? We'll have to wait and watch.
So many thanks. Well, that's what's on offer for you if you're out shopping for a car this festive season post the GST cuts. We'll head into a break, but up next, Gen Z lead protests in Kathmandu against the Nepal government, social media ban and set fire to the parliament building. More details when we return. Well, here's a CNBC TV 18 exclusive. Leverage bets by Indian investors under the margin trading facility nears 1 lakh crore rupees, witnessing a 13 times jump in 5 years. Hormuz joins us now with more. Hormuz, take us through what you are picking up. I mean, that's a significant jump there.
Well, some interesting insights dug up by our colleagues Yusuf and Ruchit about this margin trading facility and how the leveraged positions have seen a significant increase over the last 5 years. Now, compared to the end of 2020, when this figure stood at around 7,500 crore rupees, this figure now, as of Friday's closing, stands at close to 95,000 crore. That's a 13x jump from this 5-year period that you have seen. Now, even if you take a look at it on a year-on-year basis, not just the absolute figure, but also the number of shares which have been on leveraged positions have seen a 10x jump in the last 5 years, from just around about 50 crore shares at the end of 2020. That figure as of Friday's close stands at close to 480 crore shares. Now, how does this margin trading facility work? Now, this facility is offered by brokers to the traders or the investors who want to purchase shares beyond their present capital. Now, for example, if you are buying shares worth around 1,000 rupees, rupees. You can put up the upfront margin requirement of say around 200 rupees, and the rest of the 800 can be funded by the broker. Now, in this case, when the stock moves up, it of course becomes a profitable trade for you, but the risk arises when the stock moves lower and then your positions are under threat because the broker then has the permission to square off those positions, and because in case you are not able to provide additional collateral to the broker. Now, in a weaker market, such accelerated selling could further accentuate the pressure on the downside for the markets. Now, which are some of those stocks that are the most traded under this MTF? Now, mostly it is the blue chip names or the PSU stocks or stocks which have a large retail concentration. You take a look at the blue chip names, Reliance Industries, TCS, Tata Motors, all of them find a name here. Jio Financial Services as well. Some of the PSU names here. HAL is top of the pile in this list. You take a look at other names like BEL, Mazgaon Dock, and of course a lot of these retail holdings where Suzlon Energy, Yes Bank, CDSL, all of these names find a mention in this list.
All right, Hormuz, many thanks for joining us. Interesting data there. Now, a new Supreme Court bench will hear a PIL seeking a probe against Vedanta Group after Justice Vinod Chandran recused himself. The police cites a report by Viceroy Research which claimed that Vedanta and its subsidiaries engaged in fraudulent practices. Oyo is no longer Oyo. The parent company of the hospitality chain has rebranded itself as Prism, a move it says reflects its global portfolio and premium positioning. The rebrand marks its corporate identity shift for Oyo since its founding and ahead of its expected IPO filing in November. Rachna joins us now with more. Oyo, now Prism. Rachna, what's the story?
Well, big changes are underway at Oyo. Sources tell CNBC TV18 that the parent company has not yet filed for its IPO, but when it does, it will be under a new corporate name, Prism. The rebrand comes after extremely weak institutional investor sentiment, as we understand from our sources. This was around the brand name Oyo that has prompted the company to reposition itself as a global and premium-focused entity. Now, Oyo was founded in 2012 by Ritesh Agarwal and began as a budget hotel aggregator in India, standardizing small hotels and making them affordable. Over the years, they have expanded for beyond just that. Now they have a portfolio of hotels, vacation homes, co-working spaces and celebration venues, serving over 100 million customers across more than 35 countries. So under the new architecture, the Oyo brand will continue as the consumer-facing budget hotel chain, while Prism becomes the parent company identity, uniting a diverse portfolio that spans Motel 6, Townhouse, Sunday, Palette, Bellevilla, Dance Center Studio, Prestige Studio, which is in the US. Now, this along with their Innovate, which is a workspace, and Weddings.in, which is a venue space. Financially speaking, Oyo has turned around sharply, posting a net profit of 229 crore rupees in FY24 and is estimated to have about 620 crore rupees in profit in FY25. Speaking just of Q1 FY26, it's supposed to be around 200 crore rupees, which is more than double of just last year. Now, what we also understand from our sources is that the IPO filing is expected sometime this year, mostly in November. So all eyes are on whether Prism can restore investor confidence and showcase Oyo's global ambitions.
All right, Rachna, many thanks for joining us. Oyo, now Prism. Thousands hitting the streets of Kathmandu days after the Nepal government's decision to ban 26 social media platforms and applications. The Oli government claims that the entities had failed to register with the government under the country's new social media regulation laws. The registration rules come ahead of a proposed wider legislation. What started off as an online protest led to a large-scale demonstration after students in schools and colleges poured onto the streets. Protesters clashed with security forces. They tried to breach the barbed wires outside Parliament. At least 8 dead after security forces opened fire on protesters. A curfew has now been imposed in Kathmandu and army personnel have been deployed. Well, troubled times there in Nepal. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. The news will continue right here on CNBC TV 18. Stay tuned. We're back in a moment with more.